Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Welcome, everyone. First of the year, and Happy New Year to everyone for 2025. Wishing everyone all the best. So again, welcome for the Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee for June the 6th. To all delegations, the city values, encourages participation, dialogue in a democratic process that occurs in council and committee meetings and through written submissions and correspondences. It's important that those interactions remain respectful towards other members of the public, staff, and council. In case where dialogue is not respectful or a delegate interrupts councillor, staff, or other delegations, makes derogatory statements about councillor, staff, or others that are disrespectful, or uses hate speech or language that is considered harmful or defamatory, the chair may interject and take necessary action to maintain a respectful and inclusive environment for everyone, which would involve removal from the meeting. One last reminder, delegations are permitted to address council for a maximum of 5 minutes, which will be displayed on the screen in front of you. When there is 30 seconds remaining in your time, you will hear a small audio tone that will signal that there will be a second tone at a completion of your time, and the microphone will turn off shortly after the exceeding 5-minute mark. Lastly, please do not take offense if following your presentation there are no questions from council. This is council's time to really listen and reflect on the opinions and ideas shared with us from our community members. And for advertised meeting. This is a public hearing matter under the Planning Act. This is a formal public meeting to consider applications under the Planning Act. In accordance with the Ontario Planning Act, only the applicant or the owner of land affected by the planning application, a specified person, or a public body and or the minister may appeal most decisions. If you do not make verbal submissions to the committee or council, or make a written submission prior to council making a decision on the proposal, you may not be entitled to appeal the decision of the City of Kitchener to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the OLT. To understand your rights of the appeal, if any, or for further clarification regarding the appeal, please see the Ontario Land Tribunal website. And on to our noted item for 6.1. We have yes. I forget to ask if there's a conflict. I see I don't have one. I'm like, I sort of don't have to ask anyone else. So sorry, my apologies. Are there any pecuniary conflicts of interest? Okay, seeing none, thank you. So 6.1, the annual zoning bylaw update. Katie Endry, I think you are presenting. Whenever you're ready, go right ahead.
Yep. Through the chair, good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm here today to introduce the annual zoning bylaw update. These are minor and technical amendments to our zoning bylaw. They've been identified by staff over the past year or so, as well as other divisions that use the zoning bylaw on a daily basis. The proposed changes generally clarify or correct wording of different regulations and definitions to ensure that they're clear and consistently applicable. Implement mandatory provincial legislation and align zoning regulations with the requirements of other divisions. The changes create more predictable outcomes for residents, they help to reduce minor variances, and they help support housing. Staff is of the opinion that the recommended changes comply with the Planning Act, are consistent with the provincial planning statement, and comply with policies of the official plan and represent good planning. Further to the zoning recommendations, approval is also being requested for an additional legal services administrator FTE to help resource legal processes associated with development, such as preparation of zoning bylaws and agreements. This position is proposed to be cost shared through the operating budgets of planning and engineering and recovered through application fees. Thank you, and we're here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Looking to see any questions. I do have a few. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Sorry, in the financial implications, it wasn't completely clear. So are the, is the salary for the new FTE expected to be fully recovered from fees, or will there be tax-based coverage as well?
Just go ahead. Justin. Go ahead, Mr. Weidman.
Through the chair, yes, they would be fully covered through application fees.
Okay, thank you. It's also referenced in the report, the Region of Waterloo official plan and some of that being downloaded. I'm not sure this is the appropriate time to ask, but are we aware of more FTEs that will be coming forward as a result of this change? And if I should hold this question for another time, that's fine as well.
Through the chair, we do not anticipate any new FTEs needed in the short term. We would reassess this, after a year period and look at through future budget years. But at this point in time, we don't anticipate any further FTE requirements through Bill 23.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Eden.
Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just a bit puzzled about the request for the FTE because it's not related at all to the zoning changes that are being proposed here. So we don't have a full, proper report that tells us why we need this FTE position, especially at a time when, a month ago, we had members from the industry tell us that, building and construction is going to slow right down for 2025. So I was wondering if we could defer that third clause, the third recommendation, to the council meeting, and if staff could bring us a more fulsome report on why we need this FTA position.
Mr. Weidman.
Through the chair, and so we know that legal services are extremely busy with agreements, and so there are a number of planning applications that are still coming through the process. We will have additional responsibilities with respect to Bill 23, where we have to amend agreements and do other components associated with that. And we do anticipate that in legal, there are still potential challenges like Ontario Land Tribunal hearings and other components that need to be resourced. And right now, our lawyers are taking on that responsibility in terms of reviewing these bylaws when this could be delegated to a more administrative function. And so this is the best use of funding to fill out in our legal services area at this time. So staff would not recommend deferring this decision. However, if that's council's wish, then staff would take that action.
So just to be clear, I'm not suggesting we don't need this position. I just feel that we need a proper report from staff detailing, justifying the need for this position.
Mr. Chapman.
Through you, Mr. Chair, what I can advise council is that a detailed lien process review is undertaken within the legal area, as well as a time study. And the results of those time study can be shared with council between now and the council meeting. I think they lay out very clearly the increase in workload associated with the increase in development activity, as well as the download of Bill 23, but we'd be happy to provide that information to council before the council meeting.
So can we vote then just on the first two recommendations and save the third one to the council meeting on the 20th?
I think you could defer that to the council meeting, and we'll provide that more detail in the meantime, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and as a recommendation, the whole thing can be referred to council as well, so that we're not deferring anything. It's more of a referral. The report has been received, and then the final approval would be through council anyways. But that being said, seeing no one else for questions, I'll ask mine. From the report and from what I'm hearing from the staff presentation, the additional FTEs, not necessarily just engagement with community stakeholders or the abundance of work that's required, continuation of the report, it's also adopting those bylaws as well. So irrespective of what's happening in the market, people are building or not building, if we are making these changes within the bylaw, it's the necessity of the work that's required to make the changes themselves, regardless. Am I right in that?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. There are many instances on an ongoing basis through day-to-day activities, through the work that we do, through legal interpretations, through city-initiated amendments. There's lots of different tasks that happen over the course of the day, the months, and the year that require support from the legal team to make sure that all of our work is checked from a legal perspective.
So in that thought exercise, for whatever reason, in council's wisdom, we choose to not accept the additional FTE proposed, but take the report with the advice changes from the planning department. That will just sit there then. No additional work will be done until up and later that we hire an additional FTE. Or it would be minimized or reduced timeline. Mr. Chapman.
The outcome that I've been most concerned with that we've seen play out, council, is that we actually have our lawyers doing work that would be better handled by law clerks and administrative staff. And so the work will get done, but be done by the wrong staff and ultimately cause us to outsource legal work to external counsel, which is very costly. And so this is about having the workload associated with the right staff and done efficiently within the team.
Okay, that helps. So also looking at the report, some of the changes outlined, and this is really referring back to previous discussions, and not only myself, but other members of council were quite active in wanting to see changes that allows minor variances to go through easier, in the sense that we can have further development or faster development that's more softer intensification. Some of which were also on height, building height. Reference of building height is not on the top of the pitch, but mid-pitch, same as what other cities do as well. Is that being incorporated? There was some mention of building heights in reference of how what's considered a story, but again, I have some understanding, and even I still can understand it, so looking to staff for clarity.
So through the chair, the recommended changes to the definition of building height bring in the differences between how a backyard home's height is measured versus how a typical building, so typically buildings in Kitchener are measured to the peak of the roof, except for backyard homes, which have different height regulations depending on what that pitch of the roof is. And so through this latest update, we're not proposing to change how it's measured. We do allow more, so we also have a rule that of 110% from the lowest grade to the top typically, which provides some leniency when you do have a change in grade. It doesn't apply to singles, and so that's continues to be the case. We're also being a bit more clear just to help when people do have ground story, what is the ground story and what counts as a story. So when you have a raised basement, at what point does that raised basement start to count as a story? And so there was some confusion over the last while as to when do we start counting the floor as the ground story. And so we're making a recommendation that what's defined as the ground floor, and that's aligns now with the building code. So anything that is less than 1.8 meters above grade is considered a basement, and anything more than that begins to count as a story. So it allows for more light, more air into those basement types of units before they're counted as a story.
Okay, but we're not making any changes of the overall 11-meter height?
No, not
Okay,
making
all
that
right.
recommendation.
And that could be some, because this was something that was actively engaged with staff early on, was there like some rationale, or was that even consideration as an overall look? What we didn't go look at that consideration?
So because it's an official plan policy with respect to the height and the number of stories, it would require, it's probably something that's better to come through the comprehensive review of the zoning bylaw that'll follow the official plan. Because that number, I believe, is hard and fast in the official plan. So it would require an official plan amendment, which is not part of an annual zoning bylaw update. It's beyond the scope. So it's certainly something I think that our team, I'm going to look to Rosa, as part of the official plan review, could give consideration to in terms of overall heights in low-rise areas.
Okay. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, sorry, thank you for letting me ask another question. What we're doing here, we're updating 85-1. And I understand there are some areas that are still working under that bylaw. What's the trajectory on that? And
So through the chair, the recommended changes are to both bylaws. So in some cases, there are more changes actually to the new bylaw. So over the last couple of years, we have rolled out the res zones. You'll recall that those were put in place a couple of years ago. So now that we've got a couple of years under our belt, and in implementing them, that's when we start to see, okay, these things might just need to be tweaked in how they're worded to help with clarity and consistency. So most of the changes are in fact to the new bylaw. There are still some areas that are under 85-1. Typically in the central city that are under former secondary plan areas. I might look to Rosa to see if you have an indication of when those lands would be brought into the new bylaw.
And by new bylaw, you referring to growing together?
I'm
Not
referring
Crosby. Like it will go right from 85-1
to the 2019 bylaw.
Oh, to 2019.
2019-051, yeah.
Yeah, so through the chair, I think the most appropriate sequencing here would be to complete the city's new official plan, which council knows is underway with an expected delivery date of early 2026. And once we have that official plan in place, which applies to the entire city and sets out clearly the vision for the city, the land uses, the different designations, then the logical next step that we do is we update our zoning bylaw comprehensively citywide as well. And so that would be the best opportunity to bring any of the remaining areas that are not in the most recent zoning bylaw into conformity with the new official plan. So we will eventually have an official plan and a zoning bylaw that match and that are consistent between the two of them citywide.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Chapman, you are referring this item to council? Yeah. Okay. Councillor Davey, do you want to say something?
Well, yeah, I'm just
I'm just curious how the process works. Like, I'm prepared to support it now, so if I voted against the referral, then it would come back.
It would come back and we would, yeah.
Well, that's fine, thanks.
That's right. Okay, all right. So as moved, the item is being referred to council. It's not a deferral, just as a referral. And the council would have that determination to approve or not approve, I think January 20th. With that, all those in favor on the referral and opposed? And the referral carries. Okay. In that case, we'll move on to item number 6.2, which is a zoning bylaw amendment application for 400 Westwood Drive. And we have a number of delegation, and we have a staff presentation on it as well. Mr. Schneider, whenever you're ready. Eric, please proceed. Go ahead, Mr. Schneider.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair, Mayor, and members of Council. My name is Eric Schneider, and I'm a senior planner at the City. I'm here tonight to make a recommendation for approval of a zoning bylaw amendment to facilitate a low-rise residential development. As we advance to the next slide, I will first discuss the site context of the neighborhood. The site is municipally addressed as 400 Westwood Drive and is located on the east side of Westwood Drive between Glasgow Street and Damon Court. The subject lands abut 5 other residential lots with detached homes to the north, south, and east. The lands are close to the municipal boundary with the City of Waterloo, with the major regional intersection of Fisher-Holman Road and University Avenue to the northwest of the lands. The site has a lot width of 56 meters and is approximately 0.38 hectares in area. The subject lands currently contain a single detached dwelling and a detached garage. Portions of the land contain significant treed vegetation. On the next slide, I'll discuss the proposed concept. The site is proposed to be redeveloped with 5 street-fronting townhomes facing Westwood Drive. Each townhouse would have an attached garage and a single-car driveway. Each unit contains a backyard within the developable area. Beyond the developable area shown in white, staff and the applicant are proposing to establish a tree protection area for the balance of the lands, which are shown in yellow. This will prohibit future development and protect the existing healthy trees in that area. It is proposed that the majority of the tree protection area would be severed off as a lot addition and connected to the existing property at 787 Glasgow Street to the north, or included as part of the northernmost townhouse unit with the tree protection areas behind the townhouses and abutting Westwood Drive. The next slide illustrates the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. The amendment would change the zoning from low-rise residential 1 zone to low-rise residential 4 zone, with a site-specific provision that includes site-specific development standards, as well as establishing the tree protection area in the hatched area shown on the image on the right. On the next slide, I will speak about the current opportunity with the application. The opportunity to create 5 new dwelling units in a low-rise building form, to provide for an infill intensification within an existing low-rise neighborhood, making efficient use of services and amenities, to contribute to the mix and diversity of housing by providing different housing forms such as street townhomes in the Westwood neighborhood, Westmount neighborhood. Moving now to the next slide, I'll summarize the details of the zoning bylaw amendment request. To permit the use of street townhouse dwellings by changing the zoning to Res 4, and adding a site-specific provision to permit site-specific development standards for the number of units, the lot width, yard setbacks, lot coverage, and to prohibit geothermal energy systems, and to establish a tree protection area for the majority of the lands. In summary, the proposed applications represent good planning principles and are consistent with provincial and city's planning policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. We'll hold questions of staff up until we hear from all the delegations, and we do have 4. Councillor Auduni, I saw you ringing in and out, but again, we will hold questions. I think he's joined remotely, or he's having issues? Okay. Just advise me then in case he wants to ask a question. So first off, we have Christian Desmoditis. Sorry, apologies. But I'm sure you'll correct me. You have 5 minutes to make your presentation whenever you're ready.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And yes, it's Christian Simonides. So,
Simonides. So I
sorta
should have
close,
looked
I
at Bill to
guess.
ask for some help, but
No worries. Yes, so good evening, everyone. My name is Christian Simonides. I'm a planner with Arcadis, formerly known as IBI Group from our Waterloo office. Today I'm here this evening on behalf of the owners of the subject property, known as 400 Westwood Drive, in support of this zoning bylaw amendment application, whom both are in attendance, Anel and Zakia Kardumovic. Certainly excited to be here this evening. This project has been in the making of about 3 to 4 years. So we've worked very closely with staff over the years, as well as the neighborhood association and the public to get to this point. So hoping to get this over the finish line this evening and in the subsequent council meeting. So I won't touch over a lot of these slides because they're pretty much repeated, but again, existing single detached dwelling in a wooded area on the subject property. I will note that the wooded area is not identified as having natural heritage significance. Again, neighborhood context, immediately to the west, there's townhouses just across the street, as well as low-rise residential development towards the south and east. This is another picture of the concept plan. This next one here actually provides a more, easier visualization. So you can see that there are 6 lots in total. 1 is a lot addition, and then the other 5 that are fronting Westwood Drive would include the proposed townhouse dwellings. And you can see the yellow represents the tree protection area to maximize tree protection in the area. Again, this provides a summary, and I'll note that that tree protection area accounts for approximately 64.5% of the subject property, so about 2/3 of the area of the subject property will be protected and protecting those trees. Again, I won't get into the details of the site-specific provisions, but the intent is to rezone from Res 1 to Res 4, and I will emphasize that these site specifics are a direct result of maximizing protection of the existing trees, so they certainly correlate with one another. There are 3 areas that we considered from a technical perspective. So first being the planning, second being the environmental, more specifically the trees, as well as the transportation side of things, and notably on-street parking. So ultimately, in our review, it's our opinion this represents an appropriate and compatible infill development, and it's an existing permitted use within the low-rise residential designation. So this is essentially implementing the official plan designation. This also provides a greater range of housing types, protection of existing trees through that use of the tree protection area, and the compact in nature and or built form of the street fronting towns provides a greater protection for those trees as well. From the environmental perspective, so an arborist report and tree preservation and enhancement plan was prepared in support of this application. Environmental city staff reviewed and have no further concerns. Some of the measures to be implemented to protect a number of the trees is listed below, but it's not limited to that. There's a whole number in the report. And the one thing I really want to address too is that in April of 2024, 5 trees had to be removed on the subject property due to public health and safety. So due to dead branches and such hanging over the hanging over the sidewalk, existing dwellings. So our client approached us. We approached the city prior to any removals. A qualified arborist from our firm went out to inspect, prepared a memo, identified that those 5 are suitable. A qualified ecologist went out too for bird nestings as well, and certainly we went above and beyond, and no concerns were identified. And once we received approval from city staff, then the removals were completed, after which our arborist then again went on site to identify and ensure that the correct trees were cut. Now, what I will note, though, is that to the committee is that following the removals in April, there were concerns expressed from the adjacent owner to the south, 396 Westwood Drive. There were some concerns over the claimed damages of the retaining wall and such, but I'll note that we were not there. The city, as well as Councillor Johnston, received these photos pertaining to the neighborhood's concerns. However, our client did not receive any of those comments to date. So certainly that's separate from a Planning Act matter and more so a civil matter. Here summarizes the trees that are to be removed, 33 total of the 122. That summary of the red, yellow, and the green demonstrate the percentage of the types of trees that are going to be removed. So ultimately, the majority to be removed are in poor or fair condition. And just to conclude in terms of the transportation aspect, city transportation staff requested an on-street parking plan. As you can see on the plan there, 3 spaces can be accommodated, which meets the minimum requirement. And just to conclude my presentation here, again, this is an opportunity to develop lands within the existing built-up area, provides a range of housing types. Certainly there was a technical review of the trees undertaken by qualified professionals to which the environmental staff agree with. Also, as spoken to in the staff report, this application meets all applicable planning policies and most notably increases the supply of housing, which is certainly a key directive of the province. So that's it for me, and thank you very much.
Okay, we do have some questions. Councillor Davey.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for your presentation. Is the lot that's severed the back, what I'm looking at from the staff the staff report, lot 1, are these lots already severed?
Through the chair, so no, these lots are not severed. So following the approval of the zoning bylaw amendment application, then our client will apply for consent applications to implement the zoning bylaw amendment. So ultimately, that's what the lot configuration is proposed to be should the zoning bylaw amendment be approved, and then we go through the subsequent consent application.
Okay, so just to be clear, so the picture on the screen then, so lot 1 and then lot 2 to 6 and et cetera, that's, as of right now, it's all one giant parcel, correct?
Yes, through the chair, yes, that is correct. It's just one parcel as it stands, but the blue represents what is to be proposed through the consent applications.
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
Councillor Chapman.
In the report, it says that 28 trees will be removed, yet you're saying 33 will be removed.
Yes, through the chair, that's a great question. So the 28 trees to be removed include, it excluded the 5 that were already removed back in April. So that's why I wanted to note in the presentation on my table here, it gives sort of a timeline, if you will. In 2021, there were 122 trees that were inventoried. Then in April of 2024, when there were 5 removed, and then as of today, yes, 28 would be removed. But just I wanted to give that perspective that in total 33 have and will be removed should this be approved.
And have you considered replanting trees either on this property or on some other property on Park in the city somewhere so that we can at least maintain our tree canopy the way it is right now?
Through the chair, so certainly that's a great question. I will note that through the subsequent consent applications, as you know, there's the parkland dedication fees, which certainly goes towards initiatives like that. I'm not too familiar. I may defer to staff with respect to the tree cutting bylaw, et cetera, on compensation rather. But yeah, certainly that there are measures that are in place from the city's perspective that can attest to that.
So your client isn't proposing to replant trees somewhere, 33 trees?
Through the chair, I don't have that answer right now. I don't know if it's a one-to-one currently, but certainly there are, again, measures that I understand that are in place through the city's approval process to account for such things. And again, I'll note too that in the arborist report as well as the tree management enhancement plan, there's recommendations that will be implemented in order to protect and ensure that those existing trees to remain, those 89 trees to remain, are not damaged as well and or killed subsequently. But
okay, I'll ask staff then that question. But there's also the current house on the property is occupied.
Through the chair, yes. It's currently occupied, yes.
And what provisions are you proposing to offer the current tenants?
Yeah, so through the chair, our client has informed us that there are, and I have it right here, sorry. Yeah, so the single detached dwelling is currently rented out to a family. So there's two brothers, girlfriend, their children. So it's my understanding that they've lived there since 2021. And our client has been very transparent in informing them that this is certainly a short-term accommodation. They've informed them about the Planning Act application that's ongoing. They've certainly been aware that staff have been on site. So in terms of the, I guess, provisions following such, approvals, and should this be developed, certainly they would have to go through the, correct process in terms of providing proper notice, et cetera, for those individuals that are currently existing in the dwelling.
Okay, again, I'll ask staff that question further on. Just one other question to do with, affordable housing. Are any of these affordable? Also, because you're displacing people who I presume are currently paying affordable rents. And my other question has to do with green development standards. It said no geothermal, I heard that, but are there any other green development standards or permeable surfaces that you're proposing?
Through the chair. So those type of details, it's still very conceptual at this stage. So given that's a zoning bylaw amendment stage, this is more so establishing the use. And those types of green initiatives and or standards for the building and the building envelope, et cetera, are a building permit application detail that would be noted and dealt with at that stage through staff consultation, et cetera. So I don't have an answer to that. And I apologize, what was the first part of your question that you had earlier?
To do with affordable housing units.
Oh, yes.
Given the displacement of that family.
Yes, no, that's certainly a good question. So through the chair, it's my understanding that the 5 townhouse dwellings would be freehold, but that's not to say that those units can't be rented out in the future. I mean, who's to say that I don't know. So the future owners may or may not have an opportunity to rent those out in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Chair Singh. And thank you so much for coming in, and thank you for having a conversation with me a little while ago. I do appreciate it. I have a few questions following up from that, and thank you, Councillor Chapman, for bringing up questions about the trees. Very, very important in this neighborhood, as you know. So first question, one of the things that we had talked about was instead of having 5 driveways going into this development was having one driveway go in so that parking remains on the street, which is very important. The parking, as you know, on Westwood is something that is used constantly because of the intensification that is in that neighborhood. Is that something that you will consider changing?
Through the chair, do you mind if we get the PowerPoint back up? I just want to, it's easier if there's an illustration. Yes, good question. So, I guess it's not working. But I guess if you just go back to the concept plan, that should be fine. But ultimately, my answer to that is we spoke to city staff regarding having one entrance and then sort of, meandering into 5 separate dwellings or for garages, et cetera. But due to the complexity of, say, legal agreements, easements, et cetera, that to me would be, and in my professional opinion, would be far more difficult to implement in that respect. But what I will note too, and I believe I had sort of glanced over it in my slides here, is that, where is it? Right here. So essentially at the future building permit and access permit stage, those 5 driveways, there may be an opportunity to combine them. So rather than having, a gap between each of them, the first 2 would be paired together, numbers 3 and 4 would be paired together, and then the 5th one would be on its own. So you'd have essentially 3 accesses, but and having those driveways paired to allow for more on-street parking. And I will note that the city transportation staff had noted that they didn't have any concerns in that respect, but should those driveways be paired at that stage, there likely is the opportunity to increase that number from 3 to 4, presumably even 5. But yeah, that's again at a later stage in the process.
So it is something that you will consider, is making some changes to that then?
Through the chair, yes. So certainly that's something to consider in terms of, yes, pairing and the driveways and allowing for greater on-street parking. Certainly, again, that's at the future stage, but conceptually, yes, this plan works, and if the driveways were paired and flipped, that could certainly be an opportunity for more on-street parking, so.
Okay. Can you explain why the change went from 4 lots to 5 townhomes?
Yes, through the chair. So the reason why there was a change in the number of lots and or dwellings is because from our arborists as well as city environmental staff, they had noted that a greater level of protection was required for the area to the north that you see right at the top of the subject property. So by allowing for a greater tree protection area, we then were left with a smaller developable area. And in nature, a townhouse development or dwelling is more compact in built form, thereby allowing us to have those 5 smaller lots as opposed to, say, 4 or 5, or say 4 single detached dwelling lots. So it achieves 2 things. It achieves protecting and maximizing the protection of the trees, but also providing a compact built form that is also compatible with the surrounding area, being that there are townhouses just across the street as well. So,
I do appreciate that you have looked at a way to protect the trees on the I'm going to say the north side of the property and the back of the property. So I do thank you for that. I'm wondering though, if there's a way of looking at it that we can protect more trees than that would be beside the adjacent property on the other side, 396.
yes, through the chair. So in consultation with our arborists as well as city environmental staff, there is my understanding that there was a clear distinction between the health and the type of trees that were in that northern part there that required a greater setback versus the ones along the southern property line. There's a greater density of trees in that northern part as well as more healthy trees as opposed to the southern property line, which again has far less trees and or ones that are of less significance. And what I will note too, and I want to emphasize this, is that out of the trees that are proposed to be removed, they are not shared and they were fully within the property boundaries of the subject property. So I hope I answered that.
Yeah, it does. I'm just thinking about, the setbacks then
Right.
for that property.
Yes, yeah, and through the chair. So ultimately, there is a greater setback in the north, again, due to the types of trees and or the number of healthy trees there. But I will note that the southern setback is 2.5 meters, which meets the proposed Res 4 zone. So it is in keeping with the proposed zoning side yard setback to the south. And presumably understand that there's some additional room between the property line as well as the driveway that's on the property to the south as well. So.
Okay, my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions myself. So the overall concept plan is looking at 6 lots. With the zone change that's being requested, Lot 1, is that right now being recommended as remaining as S1, Res 1, or is that being requested for Res 4 as well?
Yes, so through the chair, ultimately, yes, Lot 1 would be zoned Res 4. However, as per the bylaw schedule that was prepared, that entire lot addition to be added to the north to 787 would be part of that tree protection area in the site specific. So ultimately, it's noted here that, yeah, no buildings, fences, structures, et cetera, would be able to be built on that rear portion, again, to maximize the tree protection. So.
And I respect that, and over time, depending on how those trees are looked after, they could diminish in health, in which case the trees preservation may not be necessary, and that makes it available for future development in that case. The fact that in the moment, the effort is to preserve the trees, and we're not expecting any development to come in Lot 1, why would that need to be Res 4? Or would there be an issue if the recommendation is changed to Lot 1 remaining at the lower zoning, and then for Lot 2 onward to be given as a Res 4? So ensuring that at least for the larger area that's remaining for the protection of the trees, that that there may not be a future development. And if there is, then there would have to be a formal application that has to come forward.
Yeah, and then through the chair, yes, that's exactly correct in that should there be future development on Lot 1, that site-specific provision would be in place, and therefore they would have to apply for a formal site-specific zoning bylaw amendment to remove it, say that the trees are not in good health in 20, 30, 40 years from now, for example. So there would be a subsequent application. You wouldn't just be able to, just because it's zoned Res 4, there is that site-specific that adds a level of protection. So ultimately, they would have to, the future owner presumably would have to go back through the formal Planning Act process, rezone and or potentially minor variance. It's hard to say now, to amend and or develop within that area. So ultimately, the intent is to have the whole property zone Res 4, and then on top of that, you have in the ZBA schedule that hashed area for the tree protection to just know that, okay, out of only 1/3 can be developed and 2/3 cannot at this time. And then again,
Will there be a dwelling proposed for Lot 1, or that's to remain as a vacant parcel?
through the chair, yeah, so that would remain as a vacant parcel because again, there would be no permissions for development of any nature on that lot.
Well, the front of it, where the townhomes are, that area could potentially be constructed on, couldn't it? Or
Yes.
is there site constraints that doesn't allow that?
So through the chair, the white area, and I guess maybe if I go back to one more slide, I'm having issues with this. Either way, but the white area that you see on the concept plan, that's ultimately where you can develop. The only area on the lot that you can develop, which is approximately 1/3 of the subject property, whereas the remaining 2/3, the yellow area there, you cannot develop whatsoever. So
Due to the tree protection?
due to the tree protection, yes, that's correct.
Okay, but the site itself is conducive, it's just primarily for the tree protection?
Yes, exactly, yes.
Okay, and that's where my concern remains. Now for Lot 2, what's the proposed setback for Lot 2 adjacent to Lot 1?
So it'd be immediately touching it. It'd be immediately abutting it. So that blue line there, if you see on the slide, so the blue line that runs north-south in the middle there, would be abutting lot 1 there. And I'll note too is that the reason why that lot 2 is sort of like a flag-shaped lot is because, as per the direction of staff, we wanted to ensure or minimize the number of owners that would be future owners that would be impacted by this tree protection area. It'd be easier to enforce and or regulate and or monitor if there's only 2 owners versus 6 owners, and if we extended those lots all the way to the back. So that was certainly a direction of staff, and again, 2 owners would be impacted as opposed to 6, which is why it looks, there's that flag-shaped lot there. For lot.
So this was your concept. What was the rationale used requesting that site-specific 0 lot setback for Lot 2? I understand staff has supported your application, but what was your rationale to propose that?
Through the chair, sorry, I may have confused you. So there's actually a 7.0 meter setback.
No, I'm talking about adjacent, so I'm not talking about the rear. I'm talking about adjacent to Lot 1, Lot 2.
Sorry, I'm not too sure I follow.
The side yard setback. Lot 2 side yard setback, not rear.
No, so the external side yard setback for Lot 2 is not 0. I don't.
Just from the picture, the way it looks like, it's like construction right to the property line.
No,
so.
no, and sorry, yeah, so that red line that you see there isn't the property line. I should emphasize that, yeah. So that red line is the beginning and the end of the tree protection line, whereas the blue line to the north there is the property line. So yeah, there's about 20 some odd, or 14 meters or so.
Okay, so whenever the lot is severed, there would be appropriate side yard setback then for Lot 2?
Yes, certainly. And again, the tree protection area, that prohibits all development. So you wouldn't be able to encroach anyway, regardless of any side yard setback provisions.
Right. I was just presuming based on where the red line is, so it was confusing on that.
Yes, sorry.
Okay, not a problem. I don't see anyone else. Thank you very much, Christian.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to Judy Ann Chapman. And I believe Judy Ann is joining us virtually.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have not been successful in getting the electronic delegates to connect. I have worked with Judy Ann. She will be providing some written submissions, and Kate will also help to speak to her delegation this evening.
Okay, excellent, thank you. All right, then we'll move on to Alan and Saladin Shanovic. And I believe Saladin is joining virtually. Is this a joint delegation or?
It is. It is a joint delegation. He's remote, and I'm here to speak on behalf of both of us.
All right, Alan, whenever you're ready, go ahead. You have 5 minutes to present. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So just a quick note, I have not been successful in getting the electronic delegates, so I apologize, I missed the name. Selena is not connected right now.
Okay, would that be okay? Is that an issue? We're having some electronic issues, so
Yes.
we're having problems connecting virtually. So are you okay with presenting yourself? Because it was a joint delegation.
Yeah, the idea was that I would present on behalf of him and myself for the joint time of 10 minutes.
Because it's only you now, and you're the only one speaking, are you okay with being able to do it within the 5-minute allotted time?
The speech that I prepared here is really closer to 10 minutes. I'm afraid I'll run out of time if I only have 5.
Okay, all right, well, that's fine. See if you can, the best you can do. Try not to run the full 10 minutes if you don't mind. Perfect, thank you.
To all those present for today's meeting, I'd like to express my gratitude to the city for allowing me to speak today and provide feedback and commentary on the proposal for the development of 400 Westwood Drive. My name is Alan Shahinovich, and I will be speaking on behalf of myself and my father, the residents of 396 Westwood Drive, the south adjacent neighbors to the subject property. I'm here today to urge the city not to approve or endorse this proposal. The objections we have to the proposal are simple and fundamental, that our property rights must be protected and the essential natural character of the adjacent properties must be maintained. The proposal represents poor planning and aims to bring about severe harmful impacts and impermissible infringements on our property specifically. The proposal is also inappropriate and detrimental to the neighborhood more broadly and would set a harmful precedent for all future development in the mature urban forest community. In regards to conflicts with our property specifically, the proposal aims to cause numerous severe negative impacts to our south adjacent property, including the demolition and removal of structures on our property, specifically our stone wall that supports the elevated terrain and trees on both sides of the boundary. The developer explicitly indicates in writing in their submitted application their intent to demolish and remove structures which are solely our property, as well as removing certain trees along the boundary that would require our permission. This is not a subjective matter of opinion. The developer does not have the right to execute these actions to our property without our agreement, and the city should not endorse a proposal which seeks to appropriate and destroy any portion of our property. They further seek to modify the terrain and grading along the boundary in a way that would destabilize or degrade the integrity of our elevated lands and the retaining wall structure, and to convey excess stormwater drainage to our property. They also seek to entirely eliminate the existing 100% natural tree and vegetative screening that exists along the boundary and erect one of the new uncharacteristically tall buildings in its place directly at the property line, leaving no possibility to ever restore any significant vegetation, privacy, or natural character to the property. These clear and direct infringements of our property rights and the negative impacts that would degrade the character and value of our property are an inherent and inseparable element of this proposal. The proposed southernmost unit cannot be constructed without causing this damage and these infringements to our property. These effects are completely unnecessary, unreasonable, and unjustified, and they can all easily be mitigated with only minor changes to the proposal. We have followed all of the prescribed processes and participated at every stage of the development since the beginning to diligently and honestly raise these serious concerns and have them acknowledged and addressed. We have worked with our other neighborhood residents and gone to great personal expense to contract various professionals to demonstrate and detail the content of our concerns clearly and thoroughly for consideration. We have offered at every stage to work and collaborate to find constructive solutions that could be satisfactory for both the developer and for ourselves. Unfortunately, our critical and urgent concerns have been ignored and disregarded entirely and have to this date never been addressed, considered, or acknowledged at any point in this process. These same risks related to the damage of our property, which we and our representatives have been warning against clearly and consistently, and which have been ignored, were sadly proven correct earlier this past year in an incident which caused severe damage to our property. In the spring of 2024, they trespassed on our property and removed a tree along the boundary without notice or permission. They entered onto our property and attempted to remove the tree, causing it to collapse dangerously onto our property, impacting and severely fracturing our retaining wall and blocking our driveway. They did this without any attempt to provide notice or gain permission to do so in the middle of a working day while we were not at home. And then they proceeded to attempt to cover up the damage and cut and chip up the tree on our property while it rested on the wall, leaving no notice of their entrance onto our property or the damage that they caused. This incident has severely impacted our sense of safety and security in our own home, and to this date, no attempt has been made by the developer to address, repair, compensate, or otherwise rectify the damage done to our property in any way. This incident of the removal of just a single tree along the boundary has proven that our concerns and warnings were valid and that this proposal will undeniably lead to far greater destruction of our property and risk even to the safety of ourselves and our home. It further demonstrates the bad faith conduct and lack of credibility of this non-resident developer and shows there is no basis to trust that they would carry out this development in a manner that adequately protects us from the harms we have shown will arise from their proposal if they are given approval. Following a meeting held with city planning staff to discuss the incident of damage, we were shocked to learn that despite our involvement in the process since the beginning and the multiple written submissions made by ourselves, our professional representatives, as well as references to the impacts and conflicts with our property made in the submissions of other individual residents and the Greenbelt Neighborhood Association, the city had somehow remained unaware of any of our specific concerns and objections with the proposal and the conflicts related to our property. It was indicated to us by city staff that they had never reviewed our letter of comment provided by our lawyer, and as a result, staff recommendations had not addressed any of the comments or concerns that we or our representatives raised. The fact that our sincere concerns and honest best efforts to raise those concerns throughout the process and the substantial expense of contracting various professionals to provide input had never even been seen, reviewed, or considered by anyone at the city was and remains a devastating and disappointing reality for us. It is something that has harmed our trust in this process, and it remains entirely unclear to us how this critical oversight could be possible. The total lack of consideration for any of the impacts that this proposal seeks to enact against our property are simply unacceptable. The damage that has already been caused by the inappropriate actions of the developer and our critical points of concern regarding imminent further damage that will be caused by this proposal must be addressed. Preservation of trees in one area cannot be a justification or excuse for the destruction of our property in another area. We have done everything we can to faithfully and honestly engage in the process, but the unwillingness of the developer to likewise make any good faith attempt to alleviate any of the negative impacts to our property and the errors and omissions of the city in this process that have left our serious and pressing concerns completely unaddressed are failures that must be corrected before this proposal should be approved. What we are asking for is elementary to the most basic standards of planning, to require that considerations be made and protections be put in place for our property, to mitigate negative impacts in a way that is equivalent to those that have already been made for all of the other adjacent properties. These adjustments to the proposal are simple and can be easily accomplished with the implementation of a tree protection buffer along our southern boundary that is similar to that which has been put in place along all of the other adjoining boundary areas. In regards to the neighborhood context as it relates to our property, the proposal seeks to drastically intensify the zoning of the subject property in a way that is uniquely detrimental to our property. It would replace the existing single estate home Res 1 property discreetly situated within the mature native forest with only 10% structure coverage and replace it with far more intense Res 4 lots and bend even those reduced rules to construct 5 stacked townhouses or condos on irregularly small lots with 61% structure coverage that would leave no possibility to ever restore trees, privacy, or the natural character. This change would introduce an incoherent disruption of the otherwise uniform zoning in this particularly sensitive mature forest, creating lots unlike any surrounding the existing property and with setbacks and structure coverage tighter than any in the immediate neighborhood. It would sever and isolate our Res 1 property from the uniform band of Res 1 zoning that encompasses the entire continuous mature native forest to which our property belongs. The proposed changes are not in keeping with the scale, built form, or mature treed character of their surroundings. The existing lot is large enough to easily develop 2 or 3 detached homes within the existing zoning with only simple lot divisions. The severe negative impacts and conflicts that arise with our property primarily result from this zoning change and the associated reduced setbacks to our boundary. Given the obvious more appropriate options that are readily possible for development that require no change to zoning while still greatly increasing the number of units, it is clear that the request to so drastically increase the zoning of the subject property is unjustified, unreasonable, and lacks a coherent basis. The community members of our neighborhood, collectively representing hundreds of years of residency in this neighborhood and who are presently opposed to this proposal, the same people who have over decades developed this neighborhood in a thoughtful way to be a desirable place to live for their families, have all done so while working within the rules, within the bounds of reason, and with respect for the property rights of their neighbors. These non-resident investor developers must be required to conduct themselves in the same way and operate within the rules that have fostered this great community over the years. And it is our hope that this view will be reflected by our city's representatives. Failing this, our neighborhood and the city more broadly will end up exploited for the interests and profit of the few who have no stake in our communities, to the detriment and expense of the many real community members who do. It's the consensus view of ourselves and every neighborhood resident who has been engaged on this topic that this proposal should not be approved by the city as it stands today. It is for all of these reasons I've outlined here and many others that there was not time to include here today that this proposal is not in the public interest and must not be endorsed or approved by the city. I implore city planning staff and city council to take these urgent and pressing concerns into consideration before rendering their decision. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alan. That was well rehearsed, right on time. Appreciate that. We have a couple delegations. Councilor Deneau. Oh, no questions. Alan? Councilor Deneau.
Councilor Johnson, I think is first.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
Actually, she was just something happened with this. So if you don't, I'm going to click you out.
Okay.
I'll follow up.
I'm good?
I'll follow up. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Alan, for coming in tonight. So just correct me if I'm wrong. So the proposed retaining wall to be removed is on your property?
The retaining wall is continuous and runs along the entire western portion of our property, the frontage of our property. It wraps into our driveway and then continues on the opposite side of the driveway, wraps around the corner and continues along the entire frontage of the existing home at 400.
Okay.
The section that is proposed to be removed is the section that is the frontage of 400 Westwood, and there's indications in their submission that they point to our section of the wall that is wholly on our property that runs along our driveway, along the northern side of our driveway, which also is indicated as to be removed.
Okay. And how many trees on your property are proposed to be removed?
There are no trees that are directly on our property that are proposed to be removed, other than 2 trees which they have indicated are hazards that they would like to remove. They have never sought our permission to do so, and we don't intend to agree to allow them to remove those trees.
Okay. And how long have you and your parents lived in the house?
We've been lifelong residents of the city of Kitchener. Well, you know, we moved here when I was 6 years old from Germany. I've lived on Westwood Drive for essentially that entire time. We've lived in 5 different homes on Westwood Drive. And in this home, we've been there since 2008.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I didn't ask the developer's representative, but do you know when the home was sold last? Like, has there been new ownership in the last many years?
Yeah, I believe the owners who currently own it purchased it in 2018. Prior to that, it was owned by the person who had initially constructed the home, and who, you know, there's a bit of background that's missing today because Judy Ann isn't presenting, but the whole neighborhood, the Greenbelt Neighborhood Association, was formed in 1978 to try to provide community input around the subdivision of what was one existing lot historically in 1978 that eventually was turned into our lot, 400 Westwood, as well as 5 other lots that are there. And you know, through deliberations with the community and that Greenbelt Association, that is how they arrived at the distribution of lots that currently exists there. There was one further lot that was severed in 2000 on Damon Court, and those. And part of the basis for the agreement of the community members was that the maintenance of the Res 1 zoning, what was R1 zoning at the time for those lots that were created. That was part of how the community members came to an agreement to support the proposal to initially sever those lots that created our home and theirs.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you very much for your answers.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. And thank you, Ellen, for coming in, and thank you for your time and having a discussion with me as well. I appreciate that. Alan, you've talked a little bit about what you're looking for in terms of protection for your property, a tree protection buffer as well. In terms of the plan that's in place now with the 5 townhomes and the previous one with the 4 homes there, can you maybe talk about what your preference would be for this property?
Certainly. From our point of view, I think the construction of 2 or 3 single detached homes under Res 1 zoning with perhaps some variances to reduce setbacks between those 3 new lots that could be constructed does seem significantly better than the notion of jumping by 3 grades to Res 4 and constructing these stacked townhouses. That's primarily because it's far more in keeping with the surroundings. It allows for a little more lot area that could potentially have some tree replantings if those owners were interested. It has a chance to restore the natural character that would be lost otherwise. But part of the reason, the rationale that they gave was the compact nature of those townhouse dwellings. But what we see that was changed is they condensed these structures to a smaller footprint and pushed them all directly up to our property boundary while creating accommodations on all the other sides. And that change specifically means that the entirety of the existing natural vegetative screening and boundary that's there, and what lends the character of belonging to the forest and being a natural property and privacy to our own property, that would all be lost. And with the setbacks as they are, and with the terrain interface, I'm sorry I don't have any pictures to share regarding this right now, but there's essentially no way to construct something so close to the boundary without knocking out our wall or destabilizing it or causing more trees to fall on our property. The trees that remain are very tall. These are 100-foot tall maples and a beech tree that's there, very large, very heavy. The previous one fell directly towards our property, perpendicular with the property line. And thankfully, it was towards the street side of our property, not directly aligned with our house. But the remaining trees are all directly aligned with our house. And so the concern there is if one of those trees were to be removed in a similar fashion to what was done with that first one, it could hit our house. And regardless of whether or not that damage is caused, we don't see a way to take what is currently a 1.5 meter elevated portion of land that protrudes onto our side and is supported by a stone retaining wall, and to sharply cut that at the property line and grade it to street level to support the construction of these homes. We don't see how it's plausible that the elevated land and our retaining wall could remain stable. Currently, the retaining wall is on our side, facing towards our house. Our house also faces towards this boundary. The front of our house is oriented towards the boundary. And on the 400 side, there is a gentle natural grade of permeable land that goes for, I think, 10 or 12 meters before it reaches the first bit of structure on their side. The root systems for these trees are absolutely huge. So and again, I don't see a way that a sharp cut and regrading along that boundary could possibly leave our wall standing and leave our elevated lands in place as they need to be.
Just quickly, Alan, would you be willing, if there's an opportunity, to have further discussions with both the city and the property owners and the developer?
Yes, I very much would. As I said earlier in my notes, we have always pushed that everyone is entitled to develop on their property, and that we want to collaborate to find a way that achieves their aims but takes care of our concerns at the same time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your presentation, Alan. It was really good. I just wanted to clarify one thing. I think you might have mentioned it then. So just with respect to your retaining wall and the implications of the development, I'm just still a little unclear. In your estimation, is it planned that your retaining wall will be taken down, or are you making the assumption that as a result of the development that your retaining wall will fall down?
Both. In the drawings that they present, including in their arborist report, they have a drawing that points directly to our portion of wall and says this portion of retaining wall to be removed. It very clearly points at our portion of the retaining wall, and there's a separate indicator that points to their portion of the retaining wall that also says the same thing in a different location. But on top of that, I think it's evident, and those professionals that we hired, including our own landscaper and arborist, a former city planner, professional city planner or independent planner, and a lawyer, all concurred that they've viewed this as a serious risk for destabilizing or precipitating the damage to our wall, or precipitating its early degradation, premature degradation.
Okay, thank you. If no one else does, I'll follow up on that question with our staff. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, wait, I have a question. Come back.
My apologies.
Yeah, just looking at the map and the layout of the 5 units, if they were, and I don't know if this is even an option anywhere, but if all those units were moved up, say by 1 property width, it looks like it's 8 meters or 6 meters, and a tree protected line were to be implemented or introduced between that new property line and your property, would that make things any better for you?
I think it would. I think, going for what I think is an excessive 5 lots to be put in place along what is the current frontage, if all of that could be, if either that southernmost lot could be removed entirely, and at least in my estimation, something like 3 to 4 meters. In our ideal world, it would be 5 meters of a no digging, no removals buffer was created along the southern boundary. That would be enough to take care of all of our needs. It would leave in place that vegetative screening. It would allow for whoever the property owner there was in the future to maintain the natural character of that property. After the first proposal, there was problems on both the north and south boundaries, and it appears to us that after our initial comments were missed by the city, that accommodations were made that greatly increased the setback for those northern neighbors. It pushed back from their property line by 10 meters, and the same risks of destruction of a retaining wall or damage to the property or collapsing trees on the house did not exist on that side. We haven't seen any mitigations towards the concerns related to our property at any point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Kate Lawson. Welcome, Kate. You have 5 minutes to make your delegation.
Thank you very much. My name is Kate Lawson. I live on Glasgow Street, just around the corner and down the hill from where the subject property is. I should say that I had been planning to follow Judy Ann Chapman, who's the kind of leader of the Greenbelt Neighborhood Association, and she was going to talk all about zoning, and I feel like, oh my God, I'm going to try to talk about zoning. I wanted to just agree with her, but let me just say, you all know so much and I don't. But with 4 as of right, That's the term. I don't understand at all why Res 5, Res 4 would have to be in place here to intensify. I completely get the need to intensify the neighborhood, to have more housing made available. That's really, really commendable. But why the zoning change and why the creation of this patchwork zoning is really beyond me, and I don't really understand why the developer wants to do it this way. But you all understand this in a way that I don't, for sure. And I'm hoping Judy-Ann can come and address you at council. I think that's still possible. Okay, so I then had 2 points, I guess, more to make. The first is, I just think the sustainable urban forest strategy that you guys set up is just fantastic. I just think it's so admirable. And as, a property owner in the Greenbelt, I'm very, very appreciative of that strategy. And all that the strategy says about trees on private property and the protection of trees on private property as being part of the urban forest, I think are really wonderful principles, and I'm so glad they're there for us in the city of Kitchener. When you face 400 Westwood, and you're just standing in the sidewalk, you have a lovely screening of trees, and if you're walking on the sidewalk, as I do a lot, in the summer in the heat, you have shade, you have a nice screening, and dare I say that with increasing temperatures and climate change, shade and screening will become more and more important. So the plan from the developers is to get rid of all that screening, to demolish the retaining wall, and all of those trees will go. Judy-Ann Chapman, asked why not just one driveway and go in and leave that retaining wall. Again, a question I would ask. But the other point, and this is my third point that I think is really my most important, is I really, really want to support my neighbors at 396 Westwood. The developers did a lot to create a tree protection zone at the back of the property and to the north side, but they're really left hanging in the south. It's kind of puzzling to me why the developers would think, okay, I'm going to tear down a retaining wall here at the front that continues to 396, and then the retaining wall goes in. This little patch, this little bit of berm is going to be left, and will it be taken down? Is it going to just fall down? Will the trees fall over? It just seems really, really puzzling to me that it hasn't been addressed, as I understand it, by the staff report or by the developers. So I just urge the committee, the council, to really look at the 396 neighbors and ask whether there is not some actual way of addressing the very, very real concerns that they have brought to you tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kate. There is some questions. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Chair Singh, and thank you, Kate, for coming in. Very much appreciated. And it is too bad that we don't have Judy-Ann's presentation this evening as well. I do agree. Would you be able to maybe talk a little bit about the Greenbelt Neighborhood Association and how it came about and how long it's been around for? I think that's really important to this conversation.
Wow, I wish I could, and Judy-Ann is a force of nature, and I can't reproduce that. I believe it was created in the 70s with the idea of managing development in kind of along Glasgow, on both sides of Glasgow, and then up along Westwood to provide tree protection wherever possible. Recognizing, as I say, that development is inevitable and intensification is a good thing. And I think what I have found most impressive about Judy-Ann and the rest of the neighborhood association is that they worked really, really productively with developers to say, okay, if it's not going to work this way, what if we try that way? If this is a problem here, what if we try to fix it over there? And I think that spirit of compromise and brainstorming and kind of collegial decision-making has been a really important hallmark of the Greenbelt Neighborhood Association.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. And does the Greenbelt Neighborhood Association do anything other than look at the trees in that neighborhood?
We are planning a neighborhood, what was it? You guys set up something.
Neighbor Day?
Neighbor Day, yes. That's something we're doing.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kate.
Okay. Thank
There's
you.
another question. Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for coming out tonight. One question, has the group worked with the developer yet? Have they had conversations, meetings?
Yeah, and again, I wish Judy Ann were here, but there's a first plan, and that had very kind of radical development. And so the plan that you see with the lot at the back that's not going to be built on, and that tree protection on the north side, that was the result of these discussions, which to me is a great example of working with developer to say, this is not going to work, how about this? But as I say, for some reason, the south end, it just hasn't, we've met with the city, we've met with the developers, and it just hasn't worked out.
Okay, that's good to hear. Not the second part, but the first part, and hopefully we can come up to a resolution at some point.
Thank you so much.
Good. Thank you, Kate. That's everyone.
Thanks.
All right. With that, we'll open up questions of staff. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Singh. And thank you, staff, for the presentation. I know that you have been, this has been something that has been a long time in the making. I think it goes back to 2018. So it's been quite some time that you have been working on this. So thank you for all of your work on this. And I appreciate the conversations that have been happening in the neighborhood, and frankly, I'm hoping that those can continue. So a few things. Again, I wanted to ask about having the one driveway instead of 5 coming in, and are there ways of looking into that so we can protect some of the parking on Westwood?
Thanks for the question. Through the chair, the issue of one driveway was considered following a discussion between the neighborhood association, myself, and the applicant that was held earlier this year. So the neighborhood association had asked for that, and the planning consultants working on behalf of the applicant looked into it as a possibility to try to come up with a concept plan to make it work. If you see the concept plan that's in front of us now, the front yard setbacks are only at 4.5 meters, which is only about 15 feet. And that is to maximize the tree protection area at the rear. So the first development concept that was proposed with 4 single detached proposed developable area much further back, and our environmental planning staff identified that there are significant treed areas to the rear of those buildings that need to be protected greater than this. So in this development concept, the tree protection area has been increased. The buildings have been brought closer to the street, and the rear yards are 7 meters deep, so it's slightly less than our minimum of 7.5 meters, which is about a 25-foot deep backyard. These ones are going to be 7 meters, so maybe 22 feet deep. So it's already not a very deep backyard and not a very deep front yard, 15 feet in the front, 22 in the rear. And that's to maximize the tree protection area. So the 15 feet in the front doesn't allow enough room for vehicles to move. If there was one driveway, say, if you're looking at lot 2, the northernmost lot, if a car was to come in, there's not enough room in the front yard to make all the movements for cars to come in, enter each driveway, and not interfere with each other. So if the tree protection area wasn't as significant, and these properties, these buildings could be, say, 9 meters back from the street, if you could double that setback, if the tree protection at the rear wasn't an issue for some reason, it might be possible to have a single driveway where you could make those movements, you could have more room, you could have wider swings, you could have lay-by areas where residents could pull off if one was coming in, one was coming out. But with the buildings at that minimum setback, at the 4.5, there just simply isn't functional space to make those turns and movements.
Okay, that's a good explanation. I'm hoping then that we can take a look into, as he was mentioning, maybe 2 driveways put together. I think that that's a better choice. Is this property subject to the property tree protections bylaw?
Thanks for the question. So through the chair, I had mentioned that the site area is 0.38 hectares. Our tree protection bylaw works in acres, and it applies to lots that are over 1 acre. This comes in at 0.94 acres, so it does not apply. So if this zoning bylaw amendment had not been made, the property owner could have removed any or all of the trees prior to making this application. But in good faith, they've submitted the application, submitted an arborist report, and are committing to preserving 72% of the land and over 75% of the trees on site, whereas that was not required as per the tree protection bylaw without this development application.
Okay, and that's a really important consideration here. Are there holding provisions or protections that have been put in place that can mitigate effects to the adjacent neighbors? Is that something?
So through the chair, the site-specific development standards that are being proposed are for yard setbacks to the front and the rear. The side yard setbacks, there haven't been any site specifics to that, so the 2.5 meters to the south is the base zone side yard setback requirement. So that site specific doesn't specifically deal with the side yard neighbors, no.
Okay, thank you. I'll keep back in. Thank you.
Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair Singh. I think you answered my first question. So the side yard setback is 2.5 meters?
That's correct.
Pardon me? Pinch point. Okay. I'm not sure what that means, but okay.
So
what's a pinch point mean?
it's at an angle. So
Okay.
the lowest point is 2.5. In some areas, it may be much more than
Okay,
that.
okay.
4.3 on the highest.
All right, thank you. And so we've heard concerns about the retaining wall. Have staff or engineering staff looked at the retaining wall and come up with an idea of if there is a concern there, if it's going to be sustainable?
So through the chair, at this stage, the applicant is looking to change the zoning. It's a pre-construction phase. Our engineering and building staff would review grading through building permits. So they can't submit building permits for street townhomes because they're not a permitted use. They need this zoning bylaw amendment to try to change the zoning to Res 4 to permit the use of street town. So our staff haven't looked at grading plans yet because the zoning isn't in place yet. However, I will speak to the issue of the retaining wall that's been addressed or has been brought up. The note to remove the retaining wall on the neighboring lands was a note that was put on the arborist report as a mistake. The applicant was questioned about this when it was brought up initially, and the applicant has clarified that they only propose to remove retaining wall on the subject lands.
Okay. Okay, last question, Mr. Schneider. Obviously, I can't take a look at the two houses because there's lots of trees there. And so I'm curious, what is located on the south side that's adjacent to 396? Is that like I understand there's a retaining wall. Is that a row of trees that's setting a buffer between the two homes? I can't really tell.
So, through the chair, the site itself is heavily treed. There's saplings, there's very mature trees pretty much everywhere on site. The front of the site where the single detached and the detached garage are less treed, it's more of a developable area. The areas have been cleared for amenity and whatnot. But there is a line of trees that exist along the side property line. It's not a line that sticks out because, like I said, the site in general is treed, heavily treed.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Chapman.
Thank you. So there's going to be a family evicted. Does the rental replacement bylaw enter into this case?
Through the chair, when I went on site to take photos, I did speak to a gentleman that was living there as a tenant. because he had asked what I was doing in terms of taking the pictures for the staff report. He had indicated that him and his brother rent there, and they are aware of the owner's impending development plans, and that there is a zoning bylaw amendment in process, and I believe they were aware of that when they took on the lease. However, the city's rental replacement bylaw, as per the municipal act, can only be in effect for developments with 6 units or more.
Okay. The other question had to do with the trees that are being removed, 33, I guess, all told. Is there any way to negotiate with the owners of the property to replant these trees elsewhere, if either on the property itself or elsewhere?
Thanks for the question. So through the chair, when environmental planning staff, myself, and the applicant had initial discussions after the application was submitted with 4 single detached dwellings, tree protection was a major issue, and that's why we've increased and expanded the tree protection area. But another part of that discussion was compensation plantings, and the applicant has agreed to compensation plantings on site. And so should this zoning bylaw amendment application proceed through a future severance application to split up this lot, to do the lot addition and to split up all the townhomes, the city would require a tree management plan, which would include those compensation areas. And it's been identified that just to the north of Lot 2, where it says tree protection area, there's actually a detached garage there right now. So it's in the tree protection area. Once the detached garage is demolished, there will be compensation plantings of trees in that area to fully make up what has been removed, and that will then be included in the tree protection area.
Okay. Is it possible to move all 5 units 1 6-meter distance up? And what would the consequences at the north be in, I guess mainly in the north? And by doing this, introducing a tree protection area south of Lot 5?
Through the chair, in planning staff's opinion, no, it is not possible to move them all up. To the north of Lot 2 is where, and just to the right, or sorry, to the east, is where there is a very significant grove of maple trees, and they're all reliant on each other, so removal of one could impact all of the rest. So the area at the rear, while very important, the area to the north of the northernmost townhouse unit that doesn't include the detached garage is actually some of the most important area for tree protection.
So the only way to expand the tree protection line would be get rid of Unit 5?
Through the chair, that's correct. Yeah, Lot 6, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Davey.
Yes, thank you. I was actually going to ask the same question I was just asked. Just wanted to clarify if, should this be deferred, could I get an idea of the number of trees that would be impacted if we were to move it north? That seems to be the only thing holding this back, really, in my opinion. And again, looks like they're saving around 75% of the trees so far in this site. So could you give me an estimate, or would you rather look into that more closely and come back to council?
Yeah, through the chair, I'd have to take a closer look at the arborist report. But again, I just want to stress that the area to the north, it's not exactly about the number of trees on site. It's about those trees being in a grove and how they affect the rest of the area around it. And that also includes the neighbor at 783 Glasgow, which is the corner property. So if the tree protection area were to be reduced in that area and that grove were to be removed, it could have impacts on trees for the adjacent property to the north.
Okay, and just one last question. Are you aware of any slope or geological reason that it couldn't be moved? Is it just the trees? Is that the primary issue?
Correct, yeah, it's the trees.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Singh. I guess my question is with regards to this retaining wall that I see to me, it looks like the retaining walls in the front, are they on the city's property?
Through the chair, I've taken a look at the aerial photos. It looks like its boundary. It's pretty much right on.
Okay. Because it looks like, and when I look at the in-depth reports, it looks like it's on city property. So with regards to 386, I think it is, 396. When I look at the plans, I see that the pinch point between the property line is 2.5, and then at the end it's like 4.5. So to me, it's the retaining wall is not even going to be touched from what I look at as in the drawings, like of the neighbor's retaining wall.
Through the chair, that's what the applicant is proposing, to just affect the subject lands and to not impact the adjacent lands.
Okay. And I guess just to emphasize your earlier points, this tree preservation plan, if I'm, is not in effect at all if there was no planning application. So the current property owner could have just cut all the trees down and nothing would have been done.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay. So I'm just wondering if there's a way, like if this gets deferred, if there's a way to maybe increase the buffer, because if you're really just shifting the houses, you're not really shifting too much of the tree preservation, but I understand what you said with the types of trees. So just wondering if there's if this does get deferred, whether or not like even in adding an additional meter or two on one side shift is capable.
Through the chair, if it gets deferred, I can certainly speak to our environmental planning staff, but it is my understanding that they established that line and on the north to protect those trees, and it likely wouldn't be able to be moved further to the north without impacting that grove of trees I mentioned.
Okay. So when I'm looking at this, then the 5 trees that were removed, they were all on the border of the property line?
No, through the chair, they were somewhere spread out throughout the site, but they were all hazard trees.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson, this is your second round, right? Yes. Okay, so I'll quickly just ask a couple of my questions. The lot width of the proposed severed lots for the townhomes. First of all, it's not stacked towns, right? It is street fronting towns.
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
Okay. And what's the lot width?
So the lot width for, it varies because lot 2 is actually very wide as you.
The internal lots.
Yeah, the internal lots are 6.5 meters.
6.5. What's the minimum requirement for a street fronting town?
In the base res 4 zone, it's a bit wider than that. I'll just pull it up in just a second, but it's not like they required a site specific for lot width.
I thought it was 5.5.
So it's different in the res 4 versus the res 5 zone. So the res 4 requires slightly wider lot widths and greater setbacks. So internal units are 6 meters and external are 10 meters. So the internal would qualify in this situation, yeah.
The reason why I was asking if there's a way, again, further conversations, if there's consideration of reducing the lot width of the internal, so giving the south end some more of a buffer area. If there's a way for us to find another meter or so in that way, so to give some more separation from the retaining wall. That may be something that's through dialogue is consideration as well.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Chair Singh. And I would like to move a deferral. Is that okay to do now?
Yeah, absolutely. Now's the right time.
Okay, yes, I would like to move a deferral, please. I think it's important to bring together the developer, the neighbors, and the city to continue this conversation and to work on some of the issues that we've brought up here.
Can you specify the time for the deferral?
To come back to our council meeting, which
January
is...
20th?
Yes.
Okay, all right, excellent. Okay, all right, so we have a deferral motion to the council meeting for January the 20th, and that's really to give time for the applicant, staff, and any of the area residents to, have further dialogue and seeing what from the delegations, information received, and the concerns laid out by council, if there's any changes that can be made to satisfy. Okay, with all of that, all those in favor? Opposed? So the item is deferred to January the 20th, and hopefully staff will be connecting with delegations of today and any other residents that have contacted in the past to have a more comprehensive conversation. Thank you. Thank you to staff. Meeting adjourned.